Author of Hidden History, Crimes and Cover-Ups in American Politics, 1776 to 1963, and Survival of the Richest, Donlad Jeffries separates the real from the unreal. Fact from fiction. Reverse engineering our manufactured reality. And now, from just outside the swamp-infested Washington, D.C., this is I Protest with Donlad Jeffries.
And welcome to I Protest. It's Donlad Jeffries here with you, coming to you from just outside the swamp-infested Washington, D.C., as I do every Friday this time, 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern. Good to see you all here. And again, we're going without a guest, flying solo like Charles Lindbergh once did, almost 100 years ago, for those of you who have some kind of knowledge of that. Probably nobody left alive that, I guess, that witnessed it. But as you guys seem to like it better when I don't have a guest. So, we'll talk and have a conversation. There's always lots to discuss. We're over in a Rumble too. So if you want to come over to Rumble too, I'll be monitoring that as well. Most of the people seem to go to YouTube, which is cool. I already see the familiar names: Deborah Wheeler, Karen Carpenter. I think I saw White Wolf, Don Lambert there, Brad Kiefer, Rain Cry 527. So good. I'd like to see you guys here. Deborah Wheeler suggests that I should wear my suit for just, when the last time I wore a suit, God, I do have. I have at least one suit, I think, that fits in well, but I never liked suits and ties, which is one of the things, I guess, that held me back in the working world. Now, I don't know, I guess, everybody's casual, which I always was, but I've never gotten to what they used to call monkey suits. So as you can tell by my shirt today, I'm a pretty casual guy, although I don't wear pajamas in public, and I really am looking, down on these people that are a little bit too casual. I like casual, but we've gone too far, I have to admit. So I don't know. Maybe I'll start a tuck my shirt in party, like I once tried to start a tuck your shirt out party. Twisted Pisco there. Good to see. Karen Carpenter said you have Chris Emery on our show. I've had Chris Emery on my show once or twice, I think. Yeah, he has made some great films. And I had the lovely Mary Ellen Moore as well, who's, I think, made at least the one film about Waco with him, I believe. So, yeah, he's a great guy. I should have him back on, probably. Piper Fogel, good to see you here. There's Matthew Burns. He's talking about Virginia Jeffrey, by the way. And I like a stupid American, dumbass American. I've been pronouncing her name Virginia Jeffrey, I guess, because it's close to Jeffries. And a lot of people actually, not a lot of people, but some people spell Jeffries with that G-I instead. So it's Virginia Jeffrey. So forgive me for sounding uncouth, especially when I'm trying to honor her in some way. Matthew says Virginia kept asking for the information to come out. Well, she did. And, last October, she tweeted out, she took to Twitter, which she didn't do very often, and directly asked Elon Musk about the Epstein list, and said she'd like to talk about it and to PM her. So I'd like to ask Elon Musk if I were a professional journalist and I had access to Elon Musk. I don't think I'd ask him some of the stupid questions they ask him, but I would ask him that. What did you ever talk to Virginia Jeffrey, the recently deceased Virginia Jeffrey? Last October she wanted to talk to you about the Epstein list of all things. Just wanted to know that. I don't expect anybody to do that. Well, White Wolf, you've got me beat. He said the last time he wore a suit was at his brother's wedding in 1991. Well, it's been more recent than that for me, but it's been a while. Where's my yoga pants? No, I don't. I love yoga, though. I need to get back into yoga. I need to stop. I do a kickboxing workout every other day, which I'm probably too old to be doing, and that's why my arms hurt so much. But I loved yoga when I used to do it, and so I need to. I know there are free videos online to do it, although I like the yoga class. But I have no yoga pants. I have a yoga mat somewhere. I say that. And I think there's very few of us that you would be wearing yoga pants, at least of all me. But as I say, some of the women out there I see wearing these is like, Come on. Do you look in the mirror before you do that? Just saying. Oh, Deborah Wheeler saying, just looking at the suit that we look at there's a suit. What suit is that? There's a suit you look at? I'm not sure what you're talking about. Is there something? Of course, I don't observe things like that. I guess there's something up on the screen with a suit on or whatever. Yeah, but well, Jesus Hendricks called me. You called me a real ass N-word. Thank you, brother. I'm taking that as a compliment because it sounds like it. Good to see you. Matthew Burns says, God bless Virginia Jeffrey. Absolutely. It's Jeffrey, but yeah. Okay. White Wolf, I can't compete with you, brother. You haven't worn a suit since 1981. You haven't owned a pair of pajamas since you were in the 5th grade. I know that's been a while. Okay. I don't even want to ask what you sleep in. I don't know that we need to know that. Well, and White Wolf says, why do all the tornadoes keep hitting in the wrong place instead of farm towns in Iowa? How about the Vatican or Congress? Well, I think we've all asked that. Is it why do hurricanes have they make like a beeline for trailer parks? I mean, how many trailer parks have been destroyed by hurricanes? And it does make you wonder. You never see mansions destroyed by hurricanes or tornadoes. And I don't know why that is. I mean, maybe it's, they're smart enough to be located in those places, but it's very strange. Extreme Fight, good to see you here. Sean Atwood has a lot of info on Virginia Jeffrey and how Trump was connected. Sean Atwood. Oh, yeah, I think I was on his show once, I believe, a long time ago. Yeah. White Wolf says Virginia Jeffrey not wimp out like Alicia. No, she didn't. She stayed true, and she was still talking about it. So I said, people, that criticize her, she held pretty adamant. Now, Alicia Owens, I don't want to say she wimped out, but I mean, the girl was sent to prison at a very young age, so I'm sure she was scared, What are you going to do? Karen Carpenter wears jeans to the gym. Well, that's nice. It'd be hard to work out in jeans, maybe, but Rito May says, I'm training to take on Tony. I'm not in that league. I've never been in that league. Tony is like Superman. Come on. I'm like, if I'm a superhero, I don't know if you guys know much about superheroes, but there was a really cool, I didn't find out until my son was watching these things. We used to watch Justice League Unlimited. Had some really good cartoons in the 90s and early 2000s. Batman the Animated Series was great. Batman Beyond was great. Superman the Animated Series. Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. And the Justice League Unlimited, they had a question. They had a character named The Question. And I said, wow, people said, it's me. I mean, but it was really, he had no face. Like he had I guess he was wearing a mask, but he had no face, and he used to walk around. He was always typing and asking, kind of conspiratorial type of questions. So that would be my type of superhero. Oh, Deborah says I'm wearing a suit as we wait for you. Really? Am I that? Okay, I don't know what you're saying, but again, I'm so unobservant. I really am. It could be something. White Wolf says he slept in his clothes since he had a morning paper back in the 70s. I don't know, White Wolf, you are amazing. You really are. Yeah, you broke the mold, that's for sure. Okay. You get that. That does take some time. That's true. White Wolf says that way makes it easier to get going. Yeah, why be slowed down by pajamas? Just go. Brian Taylor says apparently Virginia met Epstein at Mar-a-Lago. Yeah, if you read my article, I wrote the last one. I wrote a new one today, but the one before this was about Virginia Jeffrey, kind of my tribute to her, because I do think she was courageous, and I feel sad for all the victims of this tyranny and corruption. And she was another collateral damage. She happened to unfortunately, she's being a really cute teenager has its drawbacks. And in the case of her, unfortunately, it drew the attention of some real psychopaths. And you're right, she was working at Mar-a-Lago. Her father was a maintenance manager or something for Trump at Mar-a-Lago. And she became a bathroom attendant there at like 14 years old. Now, I don't really know the story, if she really wanted desperately to do that and see all the, I'm sure, I don't think she wanted to have sex with him, but I'm sure maybe she would be like a lot of teenagers, starstruck and want to see some famous people. I don't know. But I know her father must regret that now at this point, but that's how she got started. But she did defend Trump over and over again. And that same tweet I talked about that she sent to Elon Musk, she reiterated again that Donald Trump never flirted with her even, and she never saw him have sex with any of the girls. So I don't know. I'm sure he did, at least with somebody, but she was a big MAGA supporter. So it's interesting. Twisted Pistol says Virginia's a psyop to cover for, well, maybe her death was a psyop too. I don't know. Let's see. Rita May says you don't see buildings in Japan destroyed at all. Category 5 hurricanes because they use concrete and steel construction. Good point. Good point. Jeannie Poole, good to see you here. Will make you feel better. An upscale community near the beach got hit with a tornado and 2 beaches destroyed. At the same time, I was staying at the beach in a 1968 trailer and had no damn. Well, good for you. I don't want to see anybody destroyed. I mean, I like to say I want a tornado to wreck anybody's home or hurt anyone, let alone kill them. But it does make you wonder that it just seems to happen so much to the poor people. And look what happened in North Carolina. I mean, devastated part of Appalachia, that path it took, and all these incredibly desperately poor, mostly white people. So they got no attention from the media. They may still be living in tents outside for all I know. I hear various things. Again, it's hard to tell what's really going on because they lie about everything. Rita May says Florida needs to stop using stick frame construction. Well, I think they should use the strongest construction possible, considering that they're in the path of those hurricanes. Jesus Hendricks says, I feel like Don went on all these podcasts before they blew up. Yeah, that may be the case. I was a guest before they knew who they had on there. Yeah, it's that has happened with several people, no doubt about it. White Wolf was a big Star Wars junkie. Well, all this, I had my second child in the 90s, my kids watching the stuff they watched. But, my original thing, I go back to, God, what was I watching as a kid? I loved I watched television, as much as I could. Lost in Space, Andy Griffith's show, obviously Beverly Hillbillies, Green Acres. Kenneth in Power says, good to see you, brother. Like that blue shirt. Thank you. Making some dirty burgers for dinner, so we'll catch up on the rest of the show later. Good stuff being on American Memory Hole with Tony. Yes, that was great, wasn't it? And I should have had Peter Seacosh on there because Peter Seacosh did so much, and he knows more than me. Like, he corrected me on something I said wrong. Great researcher. Chris Graves as well. But Peter, a lot of the stuff we were talking about was Peter's wheelhouse, and he knows his stuff. No doubt about it. Twisted Pistol says she hated her dad. What kind of father allows his 14-year-old daughter to be? Well, I don't think he wanted her to be trapped. Actually, if you watched, somebody who has a surprisingly compelling show sometimes is Piers Morgan. And he pops up on YouTube, and he's usually fair. And he has some really interesting guests on. So he had a discussion about Virginia Jeffries, and he had Virginia's father on as one of the guests, and he wasn't what I expected. I mean, I don't think Trump was paying him very much at Mar-a-Lago. Let's put it that way. He kind of looked like an older redneck type of guy, and but it was well spoken enough. And I don't think, because a couple of the guests kept stressing that he was estranged from her, and he seemed to think she was trying to protect him. I don't know. Who knows? I mean, yeah, we don't know why. I don't think that he wanted his daughter to be trafficked, but yeah, it was obviously a dumb move. But again, I've had kids, and maybe at 14 years old, she knew he worked at Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump was famous, and she had heard about all these famous people coming and going there. So she might have said, "Daddy, please, can you give me a little job there at Mar-a-Lago?" And I would imagine that's what happened. I don't think and of course, she was a really cute teenager. So, but she was 14, so she may not have, even known what was going on when, everybody from, Epstein to Prince Andrew, was coming up and paying her compliments and, acting nice to her. She probably had stars in her eyes. That's what, what happens with these, especially young girls. They're not matured yet, so it's easy to see how that happens. So I'm sure he he feels a lot of guilt for what happened. Donald Trump can't keep his pants on like the Kennedys. Well, yeah. Matthew Burns said, "Did I ever hear the Gemstone Files?" Yes, sir. I have the book, The Gemstone Files, here somewhere. I think it's worth a lot of money. I have so many books that are worth a lot of money that I bought back in the day. That, if I'm not mistaken, that's the one, the theory where Aristotle is Onassis is at the center of it, I think, where it's the author who, I can't remember who the author of that is, but they postulate that Aristotle Onassis was behind the Kennedy assassination, which I can't buy. Aristotle Onassis had whatever power he had is long gone. Nobody would be covering up for him as the media still is today. Jeannie says, "I know you wouldn't be glad. I just found it so weird that what happened to a solid built and I was in a tin can. God protects the clear." Well, yeah, it sounds like he protected you there. That's what's good for you. Yeah, White Wolf makes a good point. They always build trailer parks in areas where no one else would build. Floodplains and sinkholes. That's true. And that's probably a lot of why it happens. Hope and Despair. Good to see you, Kiana Kuma. Okay, he's going to go legally smoke some weed on the sidewalk. Well, more power to you, as Briscoe Darling used to say on the on the Andy Griffith Show. Matthew Burns thinks Donald's the cover-up man for the whole pedophile. Well, I don't know, maybe, but it is interesting that Virginia specifically said he was fine. He never did anything. So I don't know. He did hang out with Epstein for a long time. You're right. Green Acres, there's a show, White Wolf, that they couldn't relate to most of those shows. But Green Acres is, I mean, I loved all those shows, and in many ways, maybe I didn't like it as much as Andy Griffith and the Beverly Hillbillies, but it's in its own category where it's really surrealistic. I mean, the writers, who both died pretty young, Jay Summers and Dick Chevalat, a director, meanwhile, was Richard L. Bear, who lived to be, I think, 104, something like that. But they played around with reality. They broke the fourth wall, and I know they weren't old. They weren't young enough to have been doing that, but sometimes you wonder what drugs they were on when they're writing this stuff. It's just so far out there. I loved it. I just thought it was an incredible show. Still enjoy it. Thank you, Oink Oink. He likes my shirt. Matthew says Donald was a disciple of gangster Roy Cohn. Well, he was. I don't know if he was a disciple of him, but certainly he had a connection there. And Roy Cohn, of course, Roy Cohn goes all the way back to Joe McCarthy, who I think was a great American hero. And very, very strange character. Roy Cohn was like a right-wing Jew, gay guy who ended up dying of AIDS, but so had some odd connections. Karen Carpenter's been surprised by Piers Morgan, too. Deborah Ritler still has the original Star Wars belt with a metal buckle. Well, it may be worth something. Star Wars is something my son was into it, kind of. I mean, he came along obviously way later when it was like they were making the new Star Wars stuff. But and I always watched them. I don't know. I could never get into it, really. I mean, I remember seeing the movie in 1977, and yeah, it was really good for that era because I thought a lot of the 70s movies sucked. I was down on, other than the rock and roll and not the disco, I was down on 70s culture. I didn't like a lot of the television. I didn't like a lot of the movies, and every other movie was starring Robert Redford and Paul Newman, and I just wasn't into that. But I went and saw it. Certainly had great special effects for the day, but I never understood the furor over it. I mean, it was just, I've never liked Harrison Ford. I thought he was a really boring hero. Just has no acting range at all. But that's me. Here I am giving into a critique of the movies. White Wolf had a customer in the steakhouse that actually thought that eggs came from pigs. Wow. This wasn't recently, but now I can believe you might have. Wow, that's hard to believe. Looking to see your comments. Brad Keeper says, "What do you make of the Waltz firing at NSA, then nominated for ambassador to UN?" Well, that's Trumpenstein, isn't it? I mean, he's a horrible guy. He's a tremendous warmonger, arch Zionist, as they all are, but he's really enthusiastic for war. One of Trump's worst appointments. But that's Trump. Why would you bring him back as anything? And especially nominated for ambassador to UN. But that's, what did he do the first time around? Who was who was his ambassador the first time? So I mean, it's God, I'm getting terrible names. I'm forgetting her name again. The Indian girl, the Indian woman that's never saw a war that she didn't like. God, this is awful. I need to keep more brain force by Alex Jones. So apparently, he only likes tremendous warmongers as ambassador to UN, but I guess that keeps Israel's interest in check. Jason says no guest today. No, I lately I will have guests on here or there, but it's always got to be somebody I really want, and it's because people seem to like it better. I get feedback that people like it better when I don't have a guest. RB Ham, good to see you, brother. I mean, RB Ham represents. I admire you very much. He's a trucker, and he was part of the Canadian trucker rally up there, and he paid the price for it. Or look on his website and see if you can help him out, because he's had a bunch of excessive fines and stuff because they went punitively after all those truckers. They're still mad at them, and he ran for. Or is running for, I don't think he's still running it, but they just had a recent election where the Populist Party up there, unfortunately, didn't do as well as they expected, but that seems to happen to populist parties. I was just on his show again the other day. Matthew Burns says Donald was given the money to build Trump Tower by an accused pedophile. I don't know. I mean, there's so many accused pedophiles. Who knows? Let's see. Jason Barker says, WW says, White Wolf says Jason's the guest. Deborah Wheeler liked E.T. as well. Yeah, I mean, I liked all those things. Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg is another one. I'm not, I loved Jurassic Park. I thought that was a great movie, and I thought Hook was pretty good. But his E.T. was okay. It wasn't as bad as you were talking about a UFO guy. I was a real big UFO guy then. Next to JFK assassination, that was my second go-to subject. I was always reading about them if I wasn't reading about the JFK assassination. And Close Encounters, Nikki Haley, that's what I'm thinking. It came to my mind. Nikki Haley was saying, that was his first UN ambassador. I can't, why I zone out on these names. But Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I remember really looking forward to that because that was right in the middle of my UFO obsession. And I don't like Richard Dreyfuss much. And I just, I don't know, I just didn't like the movie. I thought it did even at the end when they brought in the members from Flight 19, which, if you don't remember, is a big part of the Bermuda Triangle. They disappeared in the 1945 very routine flying mission. It was one of the mysteries that I loved most about the Bermuda Triangle. And it was nice that Spielberg included that, but he didn't really do much explanation on it. And so I was a little disappointed in that as well. Matthew says, I'm the expert on JFK. Well, I've studied enough to be an expert. Yes, thank you, Jeannie Poole, Nikki Haley. It did finally come to me. Yes, Jason, Karen Carpenter was talking about Chris Amber. I've had him on my show a couple times. Once, I think I had him on by himself, and once I had him with Mary Ellen Moore, who is great, and I think produced the Waco film with him, I think it was. Yeah, he's a great guy. I should have him back. Yes, Nikki did not ever meet a war she couldn't embrace, Jeannie. You're exactly right about that. Karen says I could do some reading from your books or Substack articles. I could do that. Okay, Jason said they're going to play that interview after America Unplugged tomorrow. Yeah, I'll have to check with Chris Emmerich, check with Mary Ellen too, because Mary Ellen and I go back and forth with a lot on social media. Deborah Wheeler. I have a small Avon figurine of E.T. just under 3 inches tall, so pretty cool. Okay, I'm looking through lots of comments here. I love this. Keep the chat going. Chris Buchan says, who cares about JFK? Good to see you here, Chris. Who cares about JFK? Hey, brother, you should love JFK. He was the last president to stand up to Israel. That alone should make you a fan of his. And Matthew Burns says, God bless Chris Graves. Indeed, God bless Chris Graves. Last I heard from Chris Graves, he's in the hospital with congestive heart failure. I need to get in touch with him again. Hopefully he's doing okay. Pray for Chris Graves if you haven't. Jason said Marianne Moore's on vacation right now. We wanted her with Chris, but she's quite the traveler. I can tell you. I think she's former flight attendant, and she still travels quite a bit. Okay, nice. So Jason's over. Okay, Jason's over on Rumble. Anybody over on Rumble? I'm checking that chat. I'd like to see some more people there. Since Rockfin is gone now, Rumble is it's the only thing behind YouTube. We're going to do everything to keep YouTube up, my channel up, and we can do that by not mentioning the subject that cannot be mentioned as much as possible. If we want to keep these shows up, because it's bad when I can't live stream on this, because I don't know really who else is watching anywhere else. Hopefully people are. Chris, oh, okay. You were I see. You were mimicking your hero, Ben Shapiro. Yeah, Ben Shapiro is Chris Graves has had congestive heart failure before. Chris, he and I imagine the stress he's been under, I'm sure that didn't help it any. So he's got real health issues, especially for somebody that's as young as he is. So hopefully he can get the help he needs. And Chris is I know lots of people like that, and I hear from a lot of people in Substack and elsewhere. Some of their situations just break my heart. And I have a friend in real life that's Chris's age, and he just fallen on hard times. Again, he's got his family is there, but unlike Chris's family, who appears to all have mental problems themselves, this guy's family they just don't care. He was living in the woods for a while, and they literally didn't care enough. And he was recently evicted from his apartment, and he texted his mom about it, and she didn't answer the text. I don't know. I can't imagine one of my kids telling me they've been evicted and me just, okay. Let me go on to what I was doing here. But that's unfortunately that's the way it is. That's why I keep writing about and talking about the forgotten Americans, the bottom half. He is too young to have that, Chris. But I don't know about that. But making sure I'm missing. Okay, White Wolf is over there in the Rumble chat as well. So, obviously, the Virginia Jeffries story is I still think, pretty significant. And I don't know if you guys caught the RFK Jr. comments. He made an allegation, and he was very specific about it. And I think that, and I still think that whatever good comes out of the Trump administration is going to be, if he does anything good, because RFK Jr. is the wild card. And he's still saying, they've got him under control. They got Rabbi Shmuley, standing behind him, and I don't know, with a special weapon or something. But he continues to stray off the reservation. He can't stop himself from saying what he really believes. And we know what that is. He's got a whole lifetime of saying these things. But he recently, and Alex Jones played it, it was in a staff meeting, and he's sitting right next to, who was he sitting next to? It wasn't Vance. I can't remember, some other member, but Trump is a couple seats away from him. And he's directly accusing the HHS, which he now heads, during the Biden years, of being directly involved in child sex trafficking. He said they were running a child sex, and I thought that is by far the most serious accusation ever leveled by any government official that I know of. I've never, hear or anything like that, but it's fascinating. And again, you have all these things where I don't know what has been taken out of the food or the water yet, but we keep hearing all this stuff's gonna be. So I hope it's not 2 more weeks and something actually gets done there. But he seems to be talking about it, and he and Jay Bhattacharya, whatever the guy's name is, who again was pretty visible member of the alt community world before he hooked up with RFK Jr. They're talking about a study between vaccines and autism where, and it's through the NIH, which Bhattacharya runs. So that will be huge if they can, we already have studies out there, obviously establishing the real links. They're just ignored. But when you have it done to the NIH, and it officially comes out the NIH has a study that establishes links between vaccines and autism, that matters a little bit more. So let's hope they do that, and hopefully everybody gets to him. The trafficking is always entertaining. RFK Jr. says Karen says the interview with Dr. Phil was encouraging to listen to the whole thing. Yeah, no, and you're right, Karen, it was. And even more interesting was Jay Bhattacharya's interview with Dr. Drew, of all people. Not a big fan of his, but apparently he's coming around whether it's legit or not. That was an interesting interview as well. Piper Fogel says, did you ever consider Jack Maxey as a guest? I'm not sure who Jack Maxey is. I'm zoning out. Maybe you can enlighten me. I'm not sure that I might have heard him and forgotten, but it's not ringing a bell. Yeah, RFK Jr. is sounding that he goes back. He does. I think he's got Rabbi Shmuley following him around. He's got these shackles on him, but he keeps wandering off the reservation. I mean, he clearly, these are his real beliefs. I mean, he lost his family members over it. So I think I think eventually that he will just commit to that, hopefully. And maybe, again, if anything good comes out of the Trump administration, it's going to come through him. So let's hope. And if it does, that's fine. Trump's presidency will be a success if RFK Jr. cleans up the food and water. I mean, relatively speaking to the other presidencies. Waitwell says he hasn't been a spring chicken since 1962. Julia MR says Jay Bhattacharya was an advocate of jabbing the elderly with COVID vaccine, and he always endorsed the CDC vaccine. Well, again, I don't know that much about him. I thought he was supposed to be an alternative guy, and he said some things that sound good. But you guys are up on it. That's great, and that's too bad. But again, we're talking about degrees here. I mean, what people have been in government before this? Just like Tulsi Gabbard. I know Tulsi Gabbard was at the CFR, and she's backed off at Israel and stuff. But to me, she's still light years better than what we normally have in those positions. So I'm trying to. Chris Buchan says Dr. Geo. Yeah, that lends itself to it, doesn't it? I mean, he kind of set himself up for that, named Dr. Drew. But let's see. So Karen says Dr. Drew had some fantastic guests during COVID. Not interesting. Okay. He kept endorsing the jazz, but let his guests say, well, that's good to see. I mean, I remember hearing, again, when I worked odd hours a lot of times when I was in IT. And I remember driving around sometimes at night, and Night Love Line, I think was the name of the show, would be on. And it was hosted by, God, I'm forgetting his name again. The comedian was his guest host. And, I was just struck by how kind of smarmy he sounded. And Adam Carolla, thank you, Chris. That's a God, this is awful. Why am I do have a lot of names to juggle and remember, but that seems to be my lone memory hole, is that I keep, zoning out on names here or there. All the World's a Stage says, what happened to your Rockfin? Rockfin canceled us. Rockfin's gone, so we're not there anymore. So Rumble is there. You can go check out that. A few people are over in Rumble. And so that's a nice backup we have there, and I'd like to see some more people going over there. Chris says, come see Leonardo Johnny Boy. That's my dream girl. I mean, I'm listening to her. I don't know. Is she compromised? It's hard to believe she's being allowed to say things she said. I mean, she openly says she's a racist, and talks about she really has it in for Indians. Boy, and I tell you, if you deal with, I'm convinced now that every company does this, where it's like they outsource even something like Domino's, where we have a Domino's near us, and we ordered pizza last weekend, and when my son was calling it in, and it's happened to me before too, if you call it in, because of course their website, which I've complained about, and they never even get back to you, is it doesn't work. It never works. It can't take your order if you throw any little curveball in there at all. It just doesn't do it. So you have to call them. And even though they have pretty much an entire white American staff in there, they don't answer the phone. It gets routed to some guy named Kyle that's from India, obviously. And it's hilarious how they give them American names as if, oh, okay, yeah, that's sure, they were born right here. I don't know why they do it. I can't figure that out. But every company does it now, and it's infuriating. But Leonardo Joni is really tough on the Indians. Boy, she is constantly talking about it. And again, I'm not prejudiced against them. Some of them were very nice, but India, because it was a British colony for all that time, they have a very strict caste system. They believe in the caste system. So when I was in IT, we had lots of Indians there. They'd have to find out where you stood in the hierarchy, what your grade was, where you were on the totem pole, and before they knew how to respond to you. Because if you were higher than them, they kissed your ass, and they were all over you. They were the nicest people in the world. If you were lower than them, they walked by you with their nose up. They literally wouldn't say anything to you. So it's very sad. Chris, you're in the area. I didn't know you were in the area. Okay, so she's in Arlington. Okay, interesting. Karen says the scary thing is the use of the digital data which feeds into the controller. The data is already there for the autism studies or RFK Jr. can access to. Yeah, I mean, I was writing an article in American Free Press about that, and I think it was Children's Health Defense, of course, which he started. I think it cited 30 different studies that all cited. And these are mainstream, sites from Harvard and so forth. Julia says J.J. Cooey would be an excellent guest. He used to believe in the lab. Blake was advisor of RFK Jr., but after he changed his mind, he was ostracized by the. Oh, cool. That would be good. Thanks for the tip, Julia. I haven't heard of him. Piper says Jack Maxey tried to release the Hunter Biden laptop info. He received a cup. Oh, cool. Okay, good. Thank you for the suggestions. Thanks, Piper. Let's see. Yeah, you're right. In the 90s, Chris. That's when Loveline was on. Matthew says his mother worked at Georgetown Hospital as a new RN and given flowers for helping out Ethel Kennedy. And she saw Robert Kennedy coming into the halls of the hospital. She said, yeah. Ethel is one Kennedy I can't say too many good things about. She has a pretty bad reputation. And if you want to know why Bobby started doing drugs, why young Bobby became a heroin addict, just read some of the stuff that was happening. After his father, RFK, was assassinated, I think Bobby Jr. was 15. So obviously, a very tender age to lose your father so violently like that. And his mother, who I don't know what she was like before RFK died, but apparently RFK was able to kind of keep her in check. But she just went completely nutsy after he died, and she apparently was just completely ridiculous and started treating everybody miserably. She treated the staff miserably, and she says people don't say very many good things about her. So I think Bobby lost his role model, and obviously, and his dad, they were very close. And when that happened, and he had this bitchy mom who just kind of went nuts, I guess he turned to drugs. He's not the first teenager to do that. Good to see you, Pat the plumber. Oh, Jack Maxey's been on John B. Wells a few times. Cool. Yeah, John B. Wells, I was on, I think, 3 times or something way back in the past. He hasn't asked me on in a long time. I don't feel the need to contact him about it, but I'm not sure why he lost interest or whatever. Would be the first one. Good to see you, Helen Rundell. Gavin DeBecker gave excellent COVID testimony to Mike Rowe a few weeks back. Press. Okay, interesting. And these are, and people have. I've gotten guests through, people suggesting them before. And the problem usually is, I tell you, I don't know that these people will not answer me, but, typically when I try to get, or if I see somebody I like, I'll read a blog that I like and I'll say, I got to get this guy on the show. And I'm just amazed at how hard it is to get a hold of these people because these are not household names. And yet, if I want to contact, real, movie stars like Sally Kirkland or Lana Wood, Natalie Wood's sister, I can get a hold of them much easier. And that makes no sense. So I don't know why. I think that a lot of these guys are, I call them conspiracy celebrities. They're legends in their own mind. I'm not saying these guys are, because I've not tried to contact them, but I'll certainly do that. But the track record isn't that great. Jason said, Karen Carpenter's our primary host over at the Knights of the Storm now. We're waiting for that 70s name. Yeah, well, I don't know if I'm ready, but sure, any time. I didn't know Karen was a primary host. Well, certainly a great selection. Love Karen, and I don't see her in the chat. I hope Robin Lee shows up, but I had lunch with another lovely lady. Karen Carpenter that was I guess last fall. Maybe we had lunch together when she was in the area, and Robin lives in not that far from me. So we had just had lunch the other day. So it was very nice getting together. So love meeting people, and always in a public place, because I don't know. You don't know what you're getting. These are just names to us. Let's see. I'm trying to see what we have here. Whitewell says he was always at the bottom of the totem pole, so that was never a problem. Well, I was never that high up either. Dawn Leverett says, my deceased husband Jim worked with Dr. Drew in 1993. After 2 days working with him, he told me Drew wanted to be a part of Hollywood. Yeah, that's the impression I get. I get the impression that Drew Pinsky is way more celebrity than Doctor. And what used to, I mean, he just had kind of a snide attitude that people call up. They're kind of abrupt, which is not unusual for doctors. They all have that arrogant manner, most of them. But I remember he would use the word retard on the air. And I thought, this is a doctor. Why are you doing that? He would do things like that used to piss me off. And those of you who know about my niece Denise know that's kind of a triggering word for me. Again, I don't censor anybody. And Leonardo Joni, who I love, can't stop using the word. So, what I do with people, I think those people, they don't have anybody in their life who can be categorized that way, and that they love. And I think anybody that has somebody like that they love will never use that word. I know I would never, and I used to before that, but once she was born, I stopped using it. Let's see here. Have I heard of the Society of Cincinnati, Don? Isn't that, I have heard of it. I'm not an expert on it. Maybe you can enlighten me on what about it. I've heard of that. Karen says there's a database for a major HMO that has one of 3-letter agencies that has their RFT Jr. wanted to analyze for years now. He says it will tell what is linked to autism. I think he was mentioning something about that in the meeting. I don't know if it means CIA or what. Apparently, Jack Maxey's a regular interview on John B. Wells. John B. Wells has the deepest voice. God, he intimidates me with all that testosterone coming, because my voice basically never changed. The only Indian that Chris Buchan doesn't hate is Russell Peters. Is that the Russell Peters? Is that the guy that used to be on Alex Jones? I didn't think his name was Russell Peters. John B. Wells is a big Trump fan. Okay, that's how long it's been since I've been on the show. I didn't even know how I reacted to him. Still trust the plan. Cool. And White Wolf, of course, says John B. Wells is the CIA. Well, who isn't? Oink Oink says, is the Western first world being flattened down to be more in line with the third world? So many nonsensical things going on in the West. Seems deliberately shooting itself. Well, yeah, I think so. What they're doing, Oink Oink, is, America is, for all intents and purposes, third world now. We have the disparity of wealth. There's no first world country has ever had this kind of disparity of wealth. As I pointed out many, many times, when you have a situation where the bottom half of your population, 50% of the people, have nothing, less than 1% of the collective wealth combined, you can't possibly have a viable economy with that. You've got too many people that have no interest in the stock market. 90% of the stocks are owned by 10% of the people, so they don't have any interest in it. They continue to sidestep the giant elephant in the room, which is that 80%, I use that 80-20 split all the time, because we have a casino economy. It works like the casinos. The casinos run on the operation that 80% of the people lose, so 20% win. That's the way it is in our economy. We have a managerial class that's most of that 20% that runs the best, And then, of course, you have the 1% at the top, the 1% of the 1% that has unimaginable wealth. And then you have 80% that struggle to varying degrees. The bottom 50% has nothing. And then what's left of the middle class is in that, 20 to 30% that's being squeezed out of existence. And that's what's left of the middle class. Well, once you had a thriving middle class, we don't now. And with pretty much every baby boomer that retires, you're having one less member of that middle class. And in terms of at least income, and with every baby boomer that dies, house gets sold off. Again, that's you're witnessing a huge transformation, and so we're being, turned into a society of haves and have-nots, which is the way the third world works. You have an elite at the top, and you have everyone else as peasants. And I don't think those third world countries have a 20% managerial class. That's what's probably going to be wiped out eventually. But they do have the elitists at the top that have everything, and you can see they're just getting. Trump is kind of a perfect spokesman for them, really, because he's so gaudy and walking around and bragging about wealth and everything. So I think that unless we address that problem, nothing will be solved in terms of the interests of the people, but they don't care about the interests of the people. So that's why I remain, in such admiration of Huey Long, who I continue to talk about him, because he's the only one that really, really tries to do something about it. It was a great time, Karen. Thank you. It was wonderful. I enjoyed it. Rain Cry says, what do you think of William Federer? Again, I've heard of him. I'm not sure who you're talking about. Enlighten me in the chat. Society of the Cincinnati, how the false scammer was covered. Doesn't that go back to George Washington, or maybe I'm getting it wrong? Indians are racist too, just like Jews and blacks, but always accusing whites. Well, absolutely, of course they are. Again, they're part of the caste system. They're racist against themselves. They know where you stand, and all people are kind of like that. It's not like white people don't do that either. But Indians, it's a strict doctrine with them, and again, that's still in them because they were a British colony. And certainly, we know if you watch Lady Victoria Hervey, and anybody named Lady, I mean, you know where she stands. That is one of Virginia Jeffries' biggest accusers, and she basically tweeted out a nasty thing about, see, you basically said you got what you deserved when she supposedly killed herself. And Piers Morgan, she was on that show I was talking about, along with Virginia's father and some other guests. Piers tried to get her to apologize. She wouldn't do it. She would not do it. She's like a walking caricature, a British version of Thurston B. Howe. It's like very, upper crust and looking down her nose at everybody. And that's, obviously some of that got absorbed by the British colonies like India. Let's see here. White Wolf did rise on the totem pole at that steakhouse. We've heard about his steakhouse days, and that's Americana. And White Wolf, if you were a little older and you had been, in the 60s as an adult or whatever, you probably could have raised a family and bought a house on whatever you were making at that steakhouse. Let's see. Helen Rundell liked the last Nights of the Storm because the guy outnumbered 3 gals. So I say more and more, you're becoming more diverse over there at Nights of the Storm. Good to see. Yeah, I made it see Karen says he would use the word retard or like it's and again, I understand. I'm the last person to police grammar. I don't want whether it's the N-word, and I can't even say it. It's called the N-word. It's just not that I want to say it, but it's stupid. Actually, it makes you want to say it that you can't say it, any word, or some people can say it. But it's just, especially in the word comedy, it's like the most popular word, and on talk radio and stuff like that. I don't understand it. It's like they use it when they don't have to. And Leonardo is a very funny comedian, Leonardo, but she uses it when she doesn't have to. She overuses it constantly. There are other words to use, like, Chris mentioned idiot or something like that, but anything with tard in it, again, it's a fucktard, Trump-tard. It's a derivation of that, and I don't like it because you know what they're saying. They're using the same kind of thing, and if you if you had grown up around somebody or seen the way people, maybe they're not now, I don't know. But I know when my niece was born in 1968, I saw the way she was treated. I saw adults, fine, upstanding adults, call her retard. I saw them make fun of her. You saw kids when she would be playing in the yard, kids get out the school bus and try to get her to take her clothes off. Just try to get her to do just really horrible stuff. What can we make her do? Just terrible. Good to see you, Jacob. Matthew says, Don, have you been to the Freemasons Hall in D.C.? Well, of course, I'm a 33rd degree Mason, Matthew. I'm there all the time. No, there's you're probably talking about the Masonic Temple in Alexandria, and actually, I don't know why, but it was with my wife, who was like the least likely person to ever want to do this. But we were out one night, and we were actually waiting for my son. He was at an activity near there, and so we were waiting for him, and for some reason, she suggested, hey, why don't we go over there? And I said, okay. So we went over and, I don't know. Something was going on there. And I just thought, this is the way they're going to knock me off. I mean, this is too perfect. No conspiracy theorist Don Jeffries meets his end outside in a Masonic parking lot. So I just said, well, we got to get at her. I don't know what's going on, but I don't want to know. I don't think they're going to come out and tell me to come in and, come on and join and eat some hors d'oeuvres. I don't think, but. Oink says, there's so much shooting in the foot, more chaos, more blundering. Is this when some kind of world government says, well, we've been talking about world government for a long time. And I don't, this goes back to the 60s, where right-wingers are talking about world government. I think COVID proved that with the reaction to it. I think we have a one world government in terms of the way I think there are no real dissenters. I think at the top, they're all the same. I don't know, when the last, some of you believe maybe Nazi Germany was legitimate with Hitler. I think that Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler demolishes that theory, but, we haven't had a real renegade government anywhere that says, okay, I'm going to break with globalists. Now, what Trump was talking about originally, you notice how he doesn't say anything about globalists and nationalists anymore, but before he got in office the first time, again, it was revolutionary, talking about, the globalists and we need to be nationalists. I don't think that. So I don't think we really need a world government to be in place literally for that to be. But what's happening is and this is why the immigration and the migration to countries is so important. This is part of the plan. It's part of the Great Replacement Plan. There's no question about it. Because all the migrants are going only to formerly white majority countries. So you don't see them going to Japan or China or India or Pakistan or Saudi Arabia, anywhere in Africa. They're always going to European countries, Australia, Canada, United States. That's no accident. We're the only countries that have to have diversity. Nobody demands that China have diversity. China has no blacks allowed signs all over the place. Nobody's talking about that. Where's the Anti-Defamation League of the Southern Poverty Law Center? They should be outraged. But you can bet if any white country was doing that, you'd hear about it. They want to diversify the white countries. They don't want any over, and that's why they hate Putin's, I'm sure, one of them, but that's why Putin is the demon. Putin paid his people. He said the white race is dying out, which it is, and he paid his people to have babies. White people. And Russia is the only country that's not accepting all these migrants. The only white country. And so it's pretty obvious. Good to see you, Harlan Stonewall. Rain Christ says, William, I think, okay, thank you. So Founding Father and the Muslim Uprising. Okay, that's. Matthew Burns says a GCD podcast. Cincinnati was a secret center of government set up for a false democracy. Okay, well, we definitely have a false democracy. Matthew, I've heard that. I think I mentioned those, and I think I mentioned them in Hidden History. There were several first presidents for George Washington. I think the first real president was John Hanson or something, but we did have several presidents before Washington became the first official one. But again, things change, and obviously with the Constitution, it changed even more. White Wolf says he's making $7 an hour in 1978. Most income. That was big money in 1978, $7 an hour. R.B. Ham says India's caste system actually preceded the British involvement, and the usage. Okay, I didn't know that. So they took to it naturally. Well, they seem to be, even more, addicted to it than the British themselves do. But yeah, I noticed that a lot. It's like, geez, these people looking down at, they try to figure out what do you do? What does he do here? How much money does he make? Let's see here. Washington was installed by the Freemasons, the first official president of the Cobra Group. Well, Washington was a Mason. There's no question about it. Jefferson was not, but and certainly Adams wasn't, and John Quincy Adams later would become one of the leaders of the anti-Mason party, which is interesting. I wrote a lot about him in the Crimes and Cover-Ups in American Politics, 1776, 1963. A lot of great quotes from him. I certainly agreed more with the other party back then, the Jeffersonians and the Andrew Jackson types, but John Quincy Adams was a brilliant, brilliant man, and they were the ones that were concerned about the Masons. $42 was a lot of money in 1973. Sirloin steak was 69 cents a pound, White Wolf says. Matthew thinks the new Trump cabinet are mostly Knights of Malta. I don't know. I think maybe the cabinet, but he certainly got Zionists everywhere. Jeannie Poole says she's grown tired of constant conspiracies. Can only imagine if she started listening to podcasts from George Washington. Yeah, well, does it get tiring? But I mean, it is. It's one really overarching conspiracy. They're not really competing conspiracies, and the conspiracy is against the interests of the people. And I try to point this out all the time. That people are. That I wrote a Substack about it a while back, where I talked about the one narrative. People, they have all these fake narratives these official narratives that we're supposed to believe, but there's one overriding narrative, and that is that there's nothing to see here. Move along. Everything is random. We're a tiny speck in an endless universe. We don't matter. Everything is random. A giant ball burst, billions and billions of years ago. And all this came into being through this miraculous process of evolution, which picked and choose where they wanted. And, we became from apes, but apes are still there. I mean, just crazy stuff that logical person can sit and say, well, that has a lot of holes in it. But everything is based on that. And if you oppose any aspect of that, you're going to get in trouble. Opossum King said, good to see you over in Rumble. He says, only 4 days left to get your real ID. Yes, indeed. Another great thing Trump is pushing. So do we want that? I don't think so. I don't think MAGA voted for that. I'm not sure. Oink Oink says Japan is being diversified. That really? Okay, I wasn't aware of that. GBGN1, good to see you, brother. King Charles is the Knight of Malta. Is he? Okay. Oink Oink says all the third world go to the countries everyone wants to live. Well, that's true, but the problem is the third world. Again, nobody looks at what the migration happens. Look at the countries like Haiti, and certainly any part of Africa, Dominican Republic, anywhere in South America, pretty much. These are desperately poor people, especially the ones that are coming from across the ocean. How are they getting here? How are they getting here in terms of financially? If they're desperate enough to leave their homeland and go somewhere else for a land of opportunity, God knows we have that here, don't we? But where are they getting the money? It's like Lee Harvey Oswald, the way he traveled and people like that. There's somebody there that's with the pocketbook. There's no question about that. So when the people can, especially if they show up with nice clothes and cell phones and stuff, as a lot of them do. Again, there's something and someone behind it, obviously, and they're financing it. So I don't think that necessarily they're sitting in this country and say, I have to go to America. This is the land of opportunity. I must. No, I don't think they do that anymore. I think that somehow they're tabbed. I don't know if they pay them. Hey, come on, we'll pay you $10,000. You take the family over to America. Sounds good to me. I'm living in a mud hut. I have a terrible standard of living. Yeah, I don't blame them for accepting it. I think that's what happens. I don't know. All I know is the way they claim it happens makes no sense. And that's what generally what I write and talk about all the time is I'm opposing what they claim is happening. I think whatever they say is happening is, and because they lie about everything, is a lie. Piper Fogel says the Kalergi plan. Yeah, absolutely. That's what we seem to be going on. It's just anybody that, Matthew Burns says the Pope was sorry. The Pope is a pedo scumbag. Well, I don't know. I think you're going to get a black Pope. I can see what White Wolf says about that. But I think that, I think that, and apparently both, I heard somewhere both liberals and conservatives want a black Pope again. They want everything to be black. It just drives me crazy. I'm sick of it. And, there are very few black Catholics, in the big picture. So that would not be much of a representation. But then again, look how disproportionately represented blacks are on television and movies and sports and entertainment. It's ridiculous. So I think that's what you're going to get. This last Pope wasn't a Catholic. I don't think. It didn't seem like it. It didn't seem like he agreed with Catholic doctrine. Good to see you, Kat Goya. Happy belated birthday. Just your birthday the other day. Matthew Burns was born in Alexandria, Virginia. Oh, cool. That is very close to me. Very nice. Yes, the Project Paperclip Nazis did come over. There's no doubt about it. Formed NASA. The ones that survived the Nuremberg trials. Horrible things. And again, I'm surprised that whenever I've been interviewed about crimes and cover-ups in American politics, 1776, 1963, no one ever asked me about that part of the book. To me, I thought that was one of those controversial parts when I just said, Nuremberg trials were really horrible injustice. This is unprecedented. Something, and because a lot of people think it was like the highest form of justice. It was horrible. But the Nazis that they didn't, hang or throw in prison, some of them came over in Project Paperclip. So some Nazis are more equal than others, I guess, or at least that's the way they felt then. Yes, we hope you're doing well with the weather out there with the tornadoes and everything, Kat. Matthew Burns says, Germans lost the war, Nazis did. Well, the Germans definitely did. Little Danny Hunchback, good to see you. Love your name. Don says, what's your opinion on Nigel Farage? He's big pals with Trump and just won big in the UK localized. Well, he seemed a little more real to me than Trump, but I don't know what happened to the Brexit movement. It's one of those things where it's and that's why I wrote today on Substack about nothing ever happens, and nothing ever happens. Brexit seemed like a big deal, really cool. There's such opposition to it and everything, but has it changed anything? Doesn't look like it. Nigel Farage, again, he talks. These guys all talk good games, but there's an entrenched power everywhere that is just monolithic, and we don't seem to be able to chip away at it much at all. We certainly don't seem to have much power in voting any of these things out. They don't count the votes, or if they do, we don't have anybody to vote for. So I wish I could be more optimistic, but that's all I know. I haven't seen Nigel Farage much, but he did used to listen to him a lot when Alex Jones and people would have him on. Good to see you, Kim Buck, too. Harlan Stolen says the good guys always win. Well, I think Norm Macdonald said that. That was one of his great lines. The funny thing about war is that, the good guys always win. He's exactly right, because that's what I can never stress it enough. History is written by the victors. I'm writing about hidden history all the time, and you got to keep in mind, okay, who's telling you this? Whose story is this? So if you're a child in Germany or Japan and you're reading the history of World War II, keep in mind that your forebears didn't write it. The people that defeated them did. Same thing. If you're an American Indian on a reservation and you're reading the history of the cowboys and everything, well, again, your people didn't write that. It's like anything. So I think we have to keep that in mind always. Shadow Ring by Free Mind Films covered this one big conspiracy really well going back. And oh, cool. I thought of it myself. Let's see. Wink, wink. Australia's riddled with Indians today. Yes, 30. What do they call it? Don't they have a special name? I can't remember. what are they called? But I know they're particularly, and it looks like they are coddled and everything by the media the way our blacks are, which is ridiculous. But today, going to a supermarket is like stepping into the third world, Oink Oink says, and that's Australia. That's, well, yeah, again, I think that's pretty much everywhere in formerly white countries. And it's, it's all happened because, again, the majority, and this is the problem we have now, we're still outnumbered. Everybody listening to this fine show is obviously awake and brilliant and using their mind and everything, but there's so many people. We're outnumbered. There are way more people that don't. They will not think. When confronted with evidence, they won't look at it. They just call you names. That's crazy. I don't want to hear it. That's crazy. And that's their response to everything, to all this, to the one narrative. And these are the people. These are the people that planted the victory gardens like zombies in World War II. These are the people that fought the dreaded Hun in World War I. I mean, these are the people that they jump on. These are the people recently that I remember arguing about when Waco. Nobody had heard of the Branch Davidians. I had never heard of them. I didn't know what they were. And those Branch Davidians are crazy. I mean, I was hearing this all the time. It's like, you didn't even know I didn't know who the Branch Davidians were last week. Now you think they should be killed. So, I mean, it's the same thing with Kuwait when Kuwait was invaded by Iraq, and April Gladsby, gave Saddam Hussein, our former CIA asset, the go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, green light. No, we're not going to do anything if you go in there. It's cool. And then betrayed him. Again, I remember everybody saying, "Oh, we've got to save Kuwait." It's like you had never heard of Kuwait. You definitely couldn't find it on a map, and yet you're ready to send your firstborn there. So again, I always blame people. Want to blame the Jews and the Freemasons and everything else? I blame the people. They're just incredibly stupid. I'm sorry, there's no way to say it, and most people are that way, and it gets. Thanks, Matthew. I appreciate it. You get the book. I think you'll like it. There's just no other way to put it. And again, maybe you can deprogram them, but they're like remember the Moonies, when they have to be deprogrammed after being with the Church of the Reverend Sun Young Moon that was with the KCIA, the Korean version of the CIA. You have to deprogram these people. That's what we'd have to do with most of the population now. They've been programmed for decades. And it's impossible to get rid of them. You cannot reason with them. I've tried. So I'm so thankful for you people out here that can think and appreciate what I'm trying to do. Kat Goy said, ideal would be black transgender. Yeah, maybe black disabled transgender. Yeah, that's true. Jeannie Poole says we need a plus size black female pope. Absolutely. Or transgender. That would be great. Let me see here. Paperclip Nazis are key to what's going on today. They created CIA, OSS, Big Pharma, NASA. Yeah, they sure did. Nazi Germany was a Bilderberger research lab. The rocket program was only one aspect. Yeah, well, they had a lot of great technology over there. Hope and Asperity is going to take his daughter for a walk. Take care. Well, it sounds like a good thing to do. Have a good walk. Little Danny Hunchback said Brexit was hamstrung by the mainstream parties who didn't want it. Well, sure. I mean, it definitely was, but I just don't hear anything. I don't know where I don't follow British politics. Were they successful in getting any Brexit candidates any more than here, where we really had very few MAGA candidates that got elected to anything? And even those don't seem that great. Is MAGA got it great? I don't know. Aborigines, yes. That's sure. That's what we're talking about in Australia, the Aborigines. That's the blacks of Australia, I think. Let me see here. Manhattan would be better if it was inhabited by cannibals and dingoes. Well, that's probably true. Oink Oink said Australia's flooding with Africans at speed too. Filipino, Chinese, and he said the social engineering began in the 80s, at least when Australia was more ethnocentric. Yeah, it's. I was there. I was there to see it in America in the 80s, and I was working with tons of Filipinos. A lot of them Filipinos and Vietnamese came over first, and they were pretty much all legal. And I don't have a problem getting along with anybody. So, and they were better workers than a lot of the Americans because I was no fan of a lot of the American workers. But the Hispanics took a while. When they started coming in the 80s, and boy, they really built up momentum. And I just said, this is insane. And and a lot of the immigrants that were already here felt that way back then too. Matthew Burns says Nazis, including Hitler, went to Australia. Yeah, and recently that's pretty much been confirmed. I wrote about that in Crimes and Cover-Ups as well in that book. Steffi Hugg says, Don, right as always. I assume you're saying I'm right as always, Steffi. Well, that's very nice to hear. I thank you for that. I don't know if I'm always right, but I try to be, I try to call them as I see them. Oink Oink says, huge campaigns on TV in the 80s. We Are One, We Are Many song they would play every day. Oh, yeah, exactly. We're there again. It goes. We are the world. We're the children. I mean, I'd like to teach the world to sing. Before that, I'm sure Karen Carpenter remembers that one by the New Seekers. Jeannie says another president of Argentina was releasing the papers on Hitler going to Argentina, having 2 daughters and living in the mid-60s. Where's the? Yeah, well, I said they had something about it. They were acknowledging it, and then it just kind of these things kind of they're there, and then they just they never take the next step. So okay, what happened? And that's everything. I mean, there's so many things. And going back to, I remember I wrote Substacks about this because these things come faster. Like what happened to remember the rabbis in the tunnels under the synagogue in New York? I mean, that was a really interesting story. And boy, that disappeared quickly. I mean, they walled those tunnels up. I mean, they had high chairs with maybe blood on them and mattresses and all kinds of crazy stuff they found there. What? You're not you didn't tell me if that had been under an old Catholic monk abbey or something that the media wouldn't be paying more attention to it. That was, or fundamentalist church. That was insane. I thought, and there's creepy pictures of them crawling up from the underground, look like Batman villains or something. What happened to it? Gone down the memory hole. Nobody talks about it, and nothing ever gets resolved. Ket Goy says Michelle Michael Obama for Pope. Sure, why not? Why not? Yeah, that was first transgender Pope. Cat. Good thing I'm not looking. I don't think he would be a candidate, even if she is a she. Oink Oink says, not say I don't like foreign people. The question is, why do our countries flood themselves with strangers? Traditional. Exactly. This has nothing to do with being a hater or being prejudiced. It makes no sense to, especially, back then we used to talk about it. Why are our leaders, not only are they not making them learn English, they're encouraging them to not learn English because they don't want them to. They want division. And it also holds them down as well. It ensures most of them don't rise very far. They can keep mopping the floors and cutting the lawns. That's what they want. But the idea that you would want a society where people struggle to communicate with each other. That's why, again, one of Trump's orders, which I forgot to mention in my Substack article, was the one declaring English as the language of the United States. Okay, well, that sounds good. But does it have any impact? I mean, are all these Hispanics suddenly going to learn English? I don't think so. English is a second language going to stop being in schools to encourage them to continue to speak Spanish? I mean, but this is all white people. White people are the ones who put up those signs in Florida and Texas in Spanish that made all the vote, everything from menus to ballots in English and Spanish both. Just crazy. Thomas Richardson, good to see you here. The old radio host axiom: audiences love the hosts and tolerate the guests. Well, good. Maybe so. That's good. Thank you, Steffi. He says it's true. Well, I don't know if I'm always right, but Coke commercial. Yeah, I knew Karen would remember. Coke commercials use the same song. Yeah. No, I like to buy the world of Coke. White Wolf, and it was definitely it's the real thing. Coke is. It was Coke. It's Trey J. I hope I pronounced your name right. It says, currently near me in Washington, D.C. Well, I am very close to there. You can smell the swamp as you speak, huh? Yes, he was. Trump was talking about turning Gaza into a resort back in the first president. I didn't hear him say it then, Matthew. I know he certainly has been talking about it now, which again I think is just kind of something that even seemed to surprise arch Zionists in Israel. Just kind of a very strange. Obviously, I can't support that, but again, Trump is a Zionist. He has streets named after him in Israel, so I don't know what else you would expect. Jeannie says, it didn't matter when I was a kid where someone came from. If people were here and you were here to ask where they were, the answer would generally be an American. Yeah, well, and we didn't. I don't know how old you are, Jeannie, but as a kid, I didn't know any immigrants. Really, none. In my high school graduating class, I graduated in 1974. There was not a single Hispanic. In fact, the term Hispanic wasn't known yet. It hadn't been invented yet. There were a few. There was a couple Chinese guys. There were, again, the Vietnamese were starting to come over. So there were, but they were very Americanized girls because they were twin Vietnamese girls that were cheerleaders, and that's all I remember from that. It was overwhelmingly white, very small group of blacks, no Hispanics, and now that same high school today is probably, I'm sure, minority white, even though it's in a pretty high income area. But yeah, so we had to start. I had to start adapting to it mostly in the working world. And I just remember, I just see boatload after boatload of these people coming in. I was saying, why? We didn't seem to need them, and that's the thing. We obviously didn't need them, but we needed the cheap labor. So there was a huge conspiracy. There's two things: one, the Great Replacement, and this is the overriding reason, and that is to replace the white population. And it coincided. All the immigrants coming were at the same time. What were white people hearing? What was the mantra told to white people? They're the only ones that listen. And that was, well, you got to be responsible. Don't have kids unless you can afford them. I mean, we would lecture each other. How are you responsible? Are you got pregnant? Oh, God, that's horrible. Are you going to have an abortion? What are you going to do? Give it up for adoption? No other race was doing that. Certainly, look at Hispanics today. The one wonderful thing you can say about it is that they are Catholic. They have great faith. And they welcome every birth. As far as I know, maybe blacks don't now, but they used to. But every other race but whites welcomes, if a woman becomes pregnant, no matter what the age, they think it's a blessing. Whites think it's, oh, God, this is trouble. What's going to happen to her? She's too young. This is going to ruin her life, or the guy's going to have to marry him. It's going to ruin her. And I'm not saying that, that's not some truth there. But we were hit over the head with this. And that's why you see the result is my generation, the baby boomers, had much fewer children than their parents. We generally, like me, we consigned ourselves to 2 children. And almost everybody I knew, the kids were growing up, most of them had 2 kids. It was just, there's few had more, few had less, but most had 2. That was the standard. Whereas when I was a kid, you had big families. The standard was kind of maybe 4. But you had large Catholic families, 10, 11 kids. And so we were, this propaganda was going on simultaneously, where young white kids were hearing this stuff. And it's no, accident that when they got older, especially the women, because the propaganda is always geared to the women, and white women especially, see what happened. The white birth rate plummeted. And now you have the generations coming after us, Gen X and millennials and Gen Z, more and more unlikely to give birth if they're whites, or to want to have kids. And now with the transgender thing, obviously it's complete, because obviously they want to make sure that no one can get pregnant. So girls pretend to be boys having sex with boys pretending to be girls. You're not going to get a pregnancy out of it, whatever else happens. Houston, good to see you here. We know who owns Congress and executive branch. Well, I think we can ask Chris Buck, and I'm sure he'll tell you that. Jeannie Poole says they became Americans. Well, certainly the immigrants, before me, the Irish immigrants and the Italian immigrants and people like that. Yeah, they were, they were proud to be Americans. They really were, and they tried to learn English. And they didn't, purposely not learn English. And their kids instantly learned English and spoke it with an accent. You can't say that about Hispanics. That's just not the case. Um, I'm just reading through your comments. The Vatican needs to get radical, go Orthodox, have a married couple as a new Pope couple. Chat says, well, who knows? I don't. Whatever will, it probably won't be anything good. MAGA is a term for magician. Matthew says Trump's a high-level initiated magician from Freemasonry. Well, I don't know. Maybe he is. He's captivated millions of people. Steppy says I'm wearing my Boogaloo shirt. I don't know. It's one of my shirts. I don't shop for myself. It's my wife or my daughter or my sister-in-law. They buy me shirts. I hardly ever buy any. Once in a while I do, but most of the time I don't like shopping. Houston said 1985 Live Aid concert provided how many dollars? Exactly. And again, where did it go? I mean, I've written about that. I think it was in which of my books, Bullocracy. One of the books I wrote about that, like literally 5 years after all those rock stars got together and raised all those millions, they were claiming it was all gone. And they were saying the same thing because they weren't going to the people, obviously. They went into somebody's pockets. Karen, I'm surprised you grew up with kids, or maybe because you were in California. Here in Virginia, there was a lot of whites and some blacks. That was pretty much it. Movado 242 said graduated 1977. We had a Polish guy to Chinese guys. There were some Spanish Hispanics in our class as well. Interesting. I don't know. Trump sold his soul for sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Maybe so. White Wolf. Karen says they all got along great. Well, I got along fine with everybody. I did too. Back in even in the 80s, the work environment was so different. I could say anything I wanted to blacks, especially, and immigrants, and they said anything they wanted to me. I didn't care. We all joked with each other, and can't do that now. You'd be reported to HR if you did. Oink Oink said he graduated in 1990. 250 kids, 2 Chinese, 1 Papua New Guinea, 2 Japanese, the rest white. Today, high school looks. Well, see, your replacement there in Australia came much later. Like obviously, if you graduated in 1990, and because things weren't that way here by 1990. Planned Parenthood seemed to target blacks. That little Danny Hunchback says. Well, that's what Jason Whitlock and a lot of people say. I don't. Well, originally, yeah, certainly the comments of Margaret Sanger, definitely. She specifically said that. But, I can only look at what has been successful. And it's the whites, especially the white women, that lapped up the propaganda, and we just stopped having babies. I mean, it's undeniable. It's ridiculous. Chris Buchan says boomers are the first generation raised under MK Ultra. Yeah. Trump admits to being a Freemason. I did not know. Maybe that's why he keeps doing the hand sign like Elon Musk. Movado 242 says, a little off topic, but I first ran across you on Joyce Riley's show years ago, following you ever since then, and your first book was an Iowa. Oh, thank you, Movado. I appreciate that. It's nice to know. That was a while ago. Joyce Riley, lovely lady. One of too many people that I was interviewed by or was in contact with, was a cyber friend that has since passed on. She left us way too soon, and very sad. She was in the Power Hour. Was not the same without her. It went on for a while, and in fact, last year, it looked like I was maybe going to be hired as the permanent host for that. If they were going to pay me, I think I was willing to do it, but we really hadn't talked about, figures yet. But if you remember, I was on there several times as the guest host when they got rid of the host. But yeah, Joyce was a wonderful lady, and she loved me, and it was a mutual admiration society. Matthew says, Florida Gators won the basketball championship with 2 white guys on the team. Yeah, that's what we have to brag about, Matthew. We're still a minority, but yeah, you're right. I'm well aware of that. And, I'm deep into my sports book and writing a lot about it. And it's going to be eye-opening. I've got lots and lots of numbers that are going to make your head swim. Suffice to say, one of the biggest myths there is that white men can't jump or run fast. I will show you. That's really, really untrue. And we have to start looking at the NFL, the NBA, like the rest of the business world, as giant affirmative action projects, because they are. Sports are not a meritocracy. And I will prove that in this book. Karen says, the racial divide being pushed, we used to just all be people. Yeah, sure, certainly. I mean, at this time, again, you're talking about, if you go back to and look at the 1960s, Stokely Carmichael and H. Rat Brown, all these original black radicals, and look what they were saying. It really hasn't changed in 60 years. It's the same kind of stuff. And they're still saying it after, how many dozens of different civil rights laws have been passed. Affirmative action, now DEI, all this favoritism that is everywhere. I mean, most people don't know, that for years they had something called racial norming. Nobody talked about it, that they used on government jobs especially. That's why you see so many black cops and firemen and in government in general. They would, if you're a white applicant taking one of these tests for a government job and you scored a 95%, you are compared to the white applicants only. If you're a black applicant and you scored a 65 and the average black scored a 60 and the average white scored a 97, the black with the 65 test is going to get the job over the white with the 95 test because he's judged only against his own race. That's why you see such a disproportionate amount of blacks in government. And again, nobody talks about that. Obviously, it was wrong. Matthew Burns says, "God bless Larry Bird." Well, he's last. Well, the two best players in the NBA today are arguably white, Nikola Jokic and Luka Doncic, who's just eliminated from playoffs. And I know that really gets the gander of the blacks covering the sport, but it's true. Chris Buchan says, "A huge pandemic of stupid white women engaging in romantic and sexual relations with things." Well, there's no question about that's been pushed. That's been pushed nonstop. And you just look at all the commercials and everything promoting it, movies, television shows. And again, if it happens naturally, I don't care. You should be able to be with whoever you want to be. But when it's promoted relentlessly, I don't like that. I don't like an agenda because there's no reason to promote it. Just looking at it in an unbiased way, it's no better or worse than any other kind of relationship. So to be pushing that nonstop, you have an agenda. Again, it's part of the Great Replacement. Guy says, "Yeah, we went down that road much sooner than Australia. We'll also be getting the same kind of crime and violence, already getting bad. Machete, crime, guns. Yeah, well, you will. That's what comes along with it." Harlan says, "Has the new Trump book on?" Well, I've put that on hold because when Trump was reelected, I said, "Well, I don't know what to do with this because this is now a never-ending story." So I'm keeping notes, and I will revisit it at some point. But that's why I went to the sports book. I said, this has been in me for a while. I feel passionately about it. I got to get this off my chest. I don't know that anybody will publish it. I don't know how I'm going to get it out there, but I'll get it out somehow. But yeah, the Trump I will revisit it. Piper Fogel says, "MK Ultra was moved to South America and renamed Brain Health Initiative. Dr. Jack Cruz said immigrants coming north are part of the program." Piper, you're very well informed. I haven't heard that, so that's good to see. Maybe to get you on this show. Dr. Jack Cruz says immigrants coming north are part of the program. That's they certainly did a lot with MK Ultra. We still don't really know, how many people were affected by it. We just really don't know. Matthew says, "I look like I'm in Hawaii with a shirt." Well, I'm definitely not in Hawaii. I'm pretty far from Hawaii, but I've got the spirit going, I guess, with the shirt. Chris says, "Civil rights is about taking away white people's rights and genocide and replacing us." Well, I don't, again, I certainly would have supported the civil rights movement if I had been an adult back then, because I'm an egalitarian. But you have to. The problem is what happened is, and the people that were for civil rights, the whole idea was integration. They want everybody to live together. I don't think there should be any forced integration. That was a problem with busing and things like that. But now you have black leaders seem to be pushing segregation again. They sound a lot like the white separatists, back in the day. They don't seem to want integration, and that's fine. It shouldn't be forced. I don't want to be around ghetto culture at all. People, blacks that aren't, part of ghetto culture, it's fine. Of course, I'm happy to be friends with them. I don't want nothing to do with ghetto culture. Why would I want to subject myself to somebody thinking I looked at them the wrong way and maybe killing me for no reason, as happened to that Austin Metcalf? It's ridiculous. So again, we have to decide if back then the premise was that restaurants and businesses didn't have a right to deny entrance to someone who was black. Okay, fine. If you're going to say that, then fast forward to when Trump was president. Restaurants don't have a right to deny service to Sarah Huckabee Sanders and people like that because they work for Trump. That's exactly what happened. And nobody sensed the irony. So again, both sides, the left is completely hypocritical on all this. You either believe in equal rights or you don't. They don't. No one believes in equal rights. Otherwise, you wouldn't have something like affirmative action, which is discrimination, to supposedly solve past discrimination from 70 years ago. So at this point, it's absolutely ridiculous, but they're still doing it. Just outside the swamp. Yes, that's where I am, Matthew. Kia, not to take, sure, you need to take a spring walk. Take your walk. Chris Buchan says that I watched a documentary from the BBC about the the British one. Yeah, exactly. I wasn't thinking of any other kind, Chris. About the Zionist settlers that just came out. No, I did not. I did not see that. But Ken says he knows where he's going to go to get away from them and the others. Well, I don't know. I don't know where we can run at this point, unless you have money. Chris Buchan said, if he had the money, he means he would have moved somewhere already. Costa Rica is a good one. Well, that's what people say. I've heard that about Costa Rica too. I don't know. It's certainly during COVID, it doesn't look like there was any place to go because the entire world rolled over and played dead. So I don't know. And obeyed, orders that made no sense. GTA Philadelphia. Good to see you, GTA. I don't recognize that name. I love to see people here who I haven't seen before. Okay, going over into Rumble. Hey, guys, can we see some? Let's have some thumbs up over here. Thumbs up, please, in the chat. Give it a like. Let's give it a like here, or certainly on YouTube. Okay, what do we have here? Ryan Bradley, good to see you. Okay, everybody's up. Opossum King said, look what Rubio's attempting to do in Africa. Africa's not having any of it. The GM assembly plant in Texas, only 50% can speak English. Opossum King said, yeah, well, and good. That's the kind of thing that Trump would still brag about. He doesn't care. Trump is, again, he's not what he's pretending. The last thing he is a racist. If you saw what he did, what was on his mind last weekend? What was on his mind? Not Austin Metcalf, who he has not said one word about. And then he still hasn't said anything after Virginia Jeffries obviously was murdered, silenced, and had said good things about him and tried to, clear his name and said, no, he never bothered me and he never bothered the other girls. You think he would have enough decency to say rest in peace, at least he hasn't. No, he gets irate and posts this long rant on Truth Social about Shadur Sanders, who is the son of Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, probably the most arrogant black athlete of all time, who slid from being a supposed top pick in the draft to the 5th round. And the blacks, it was a gnashing of the teeth felt all over the country from the black community, especially the sports talking heads. This idiot Trump gets on there and talks about what a great guy Deion Sanders is. Deion Sanders hates white people. But again, Trump is supposedly the white supremacist. He is so not what he's supposed to be. I mean, you judge by his actions, and it's absolutely ridiculous. Thank you, Matthew. Love so good to see you here. I appreciate the kind words, my friend. Yeah, Kian says you have to get the money, otherwise you're trapped, and that's true. And that's why the elite can act the way they do about any of this, because they live in gated communities. They're not subject to it. If you look at how people feel about the ghetto culture, especially, it's in direct proportion to what their proximity to it is. If you live around ghetto culture, then you're obviously going to be really prejudiced, or you're going to just be, subverted by it, and you're going to become one, basically. So I guess that happens too. But if you are a typical liberal woke person on race, then you're going to live far away from, and only black people you're going to live around are going to be nice, normal black people that are a small minority in your neighborhood. So again, I just really resent these people for basically hitting average white people over the head with demanding that they accept. Why am I going to accept somebody who's impolite, rude, and is ready to resort to violence at the drop of a hat? Why am I going to find that attractive? So that, again, I don't know how white people don't have the balls to talk like this, but they don't. Kian says, perfect weather in some parts of Costa Rica. The Spanish language is a bummer. Yeah, well, I speak un poco solamente. I speak a little Spanish. I took Spanish. I took 4 years in high school, and I passed 2 of them. So, food I hear except Lozano sauce. Chris loves Colombian food. Let's see here. U.S. government created ghetto culture with their policies of implementing welfare. Exactly, Movado. And they did. I mean, this is, and what, not only did they create it, but they enable it. And they glorify it. And all these stupid black celebrities, the Spike Lees of the world, who live in gated communities and have made millions of dollars and really have blood on their hands because they've glorified this absurd culture of stupidity and violence that results every night in blacks killing blacks in Chicago and New York and every city across this country. But that blood is on their hands because they've glorified it instead of spoofing it and ridiculing it. Would you say? I mean, you think how easy it would be for a real comedic minds to eviscerate ghetto culture, wearing their pants down around there and not being able to speak, purposely not speaking English correctly, calling their incorrect language Ebonics, just so assured of their stupidity and calling other people stupid when you're obviously barely educated. But okay, wait. Somebody's saying RB Ham's asking me. I'm going to put it in the chat. Here's the I'm putting the Rumble link in the chat here. Hopefully that pops up. There it is. It's under Tony Arterburn. You see it there at the bottom. And that's the, you can find me on Rumbles too. Under I think on the author Jeffries. A lot of my interviews that I put up there from that I've done over the years with people. But so you subscribe to the America and Blood Rumble channel and subscribe to my channel too. Movado says white people have a history of violence themselves done so depending on swings. Well, yeah, I mean we all do certainly. But the problem is we've never had a culture like this because it's not a culture; it's an anti-culture, and it's the only culture I've ever seen where learning things is like Chris Rock has said in some moments of candor. It's a glorification of not knowing things, and that's what it is. It's being purposely dumb. Don't act white by reading a book or speaking English correctly. That's just really dumb, especially when it's resulted in what it's resulted in. Overbearing poverty and crime. To me, it's just the height of irresponsibility for these black leaders to be, other than Jason Whitlock, to be enabling it and glorifying it, speaking out in support of it. It's not culture, it's anti-culture. And we need to call it out for what it is. Chris Buckins says, turning everyone we can against Israel and the Jews is key to everything. Well, good luck there, Chris. And certainly, the alt media is doing that. Nevada says when hip hop first came out, it was positive. Yeah, I've heard that. Okay, but it certainly was turned into game. And if you want to know how scripted and fake all this stuff is, when Jason Whitlock has done so many good things, but he did such great work on Stephen A. Smith, and he did under Tupac Shakur too. Tupac Shakur is he's the one that invented that gangster. Was it Gangsta Life and all that? The tattoo he had. He found a video interview with a I think it was teenage, maybe he was 18, 19, something like that. Very young Tupac Shakur. You wouldn't know him, folks. You've got to see that interview. Whitlock has showed it many times. He sounds effeminate. He looks gay. The last thing he looks like is a gangster. He was playing a part. He was hired to be that role. And you got to look at it. I mean, it's amazing, but that tells me, these people are actors. Chris says, yeah, look at Africa. They've been killing and raping each other. Well, maybe so. That's true. And again, if that's the case, then we need to address that. But I think the first step here in America is, because presumably black people in this country have been way more educated than they are in the rest of the world. They should be. And So if it comes to that, where it comes to the conclusion where we just can't live with people because they're black, because they have a propensity for violence, then any sane society realizes, okay, we got to get rid of you. Sorry, we can't have you here if you're just going to be, resorting to violence at the drop of a hat. But I think the first thing we had to do is what we've never tried, and that is just to hold everybody accountable in the same way. Rules, laws, and standards of conduct should apply equally to everybody, and that includes the black guy on the job that the white boss is too chicken shit to say anything to, is too big a cuck. And that's every job site. Why? What are you scared of? You're his supervisor. But I've seen it over and over again for decades. Why is it so hard for you to hold everyone accountable? Why do you want to give them special privileges? I don't understand it. And then talk behind their back. It's absolutely ridiculous. Chris Donald says he doesn't accept violent gang behavior, not matter who they are, Hispanic, Asian, or black. Absolutely, yeah. It's we shouldn't be glorifying it. The whole American culture has become a war on proud to be ignorant and vicious culture. America is a great state. And Chris, you're exactly right. Our culture is thoroughly ghettoized. There's no doubt about it. Julia says Whitney Webb has a great article on how hip hop was turned violent on purpose to promote crime to fill the private prisons. Yeah, I think that's true. There's no doubt about it. Again, look at somebody like P. Diddy, who was formerly Puff Daddy, before he started raping Justin Bieber or whatever kind of crazy stuff he was doing at the Diddy parties. But I think his father was a murderer or criminal, and his brother was killed in front of his son. He had a horrible upbringing, obviously. And I talked about this in Survival of the Richest. How does somebody like that? How did he get in a position to start his own record company? Obviously, he had no money. He came from a thug family, but somebody. And again, I'm sure, unfortunately, as Chris would say, there was a Goldstein or Rosenstein in there somewhere that financed him, that started Death Row Records. And what a name, Death Row Records. Who are you appealing to there? You're promoting death row again. So you're promoting people on death row who was obviously murdered. So he started that way. And again, we had to, and we looked at Tupac Shakur. This guy was an effeminate, very unthreatening looking guy, just a few years before he became the head of the gangster rap. Absolutely. Let's see. Powers of D did promote the dumbing down of America, be a drug cut. Absolutely. Well, they don't want it. Why would you want a smart population? At some point, they might figure out how to get rid of your ass and why you're in power. We can't vote these guys out. We've got to do something to throw the bums out. Gene said maybe he had been Diddy. Yeah, he probably was. There's a huge gay subculture among blacks. That's Chris, but that's what I don't know how Jason Whitlock stays alive. He pokes those guys all the time. He's constantly talking about how gay rap is and how you guys like to do what is it? You guys got a cop giving each other rear end jobs, and that's infuriating him. I'm surprised. I hope he has a lot of security, because he doesn't hold back at all. He enjoys doing it. He relishes it. I love watching his show, and he talks about Jews a lot too. He really does. Movado says, well, I wish the police were scared of us. Oh, yeah, they are. They're always fearing for their answers. Well, Movado, if you know, I'm assuming you're black, I guess. If you know what I've written, read my work about the police. I think I'm their biggest critic out there. I mean, I would be all for them being abolished. They do way more negative than positive. So, yeah, when the police run into gangsters, they each deserve each other. But yeah, you're right. They've shot tons of blacks, but they shot whites too. They've done terrible things to all kinds of people because they're out of control. So I certainly agree with you on that. Ice Cube talked about being in meetings where record execs dictated the type of lyrics more violent. Josie, yeah, I've heard about that too. Chris said he read my mind. I read his mind. Death Row is Suge Knight. Harlan Stoll said, sure, exactly. And Death or was it? Okay, well, I don't know. I don't know what record label did he, but he was handed a record label. I know that. Again, I'm no expert on rap. Again, I think it's all stupid, so I want to be an expert on it. Movado said Rockefeller said we want people just smart enough to run the machines. Absolutely. They want you to be just smart enough to obey orders. Chris says, no way of voting our way out of this. No, obviously. And Kian says, listening to rap is gay. And Jason says, the rappers are gay. So it's a whole gay thing. The liberal independent media pundits like Sabby Sabs. I've seen her. Yes, she seems to do some good stuff, but she's calling Uncle Tom. I mean, she's calling Jason Whitlock and Uncle Tom again. That's because he's criticizing ghetto culture. And I know the most blacks hate Whitlock. And but he's not an Uncle Tom. He's a very proud guy. But and maybe he's compromised too. Maybe again, this is all he's controlled. Chris says white women fall if the black men are so sexy, complete morons. Say, well, I mean, again, how many times do you have to see this happen where the black man leaves after impregnating him? And I don't know how many times I go out and I see these pathetic white, grandparents pushing a baby stroller with a half black kid in it. And you know what the story there is. I mean, but again, it's just, the propaganda is really strong. It really is. Bovada says even Public Enemy folded the pressure. Yeah, sure they did. I mean, there's, because again, you can't be like enemies of the power structure when you're being financed by the power structure. And these people were, obviously. Bovada says Uncle Tom was a good guy. Exactly. He was a hero. So, but again, what does that say about the people that are calling him Uncle Tom? Is they don't like what Uncle Tom represented. So again, I don't understand any of it. I mean, I've gotten arguments with people. Some black woman was arguing with me one time about free speech and on social media, and just kept saying, "You whites and your free speech." And I said, "What? So you don't support free speech?" And she didn't. She kept saying, "You don't understand. You're white." I said, "Okay, you're right. I don't understand. Free speech should be a universal concept." But she wanted to call it white. And that's that ghetto culture. They want to call math white. They want to call racist. They want to call, classical music racist. I mean, this is insane. They want to call all culture that was created by whites. I don't know, you in your society if you created a society, you wouldn't want people to have free speech. But I couldn't, I couldn't get anywhere with her. So eventually you got to give up, Ken says they've neutered the white man so hard they're going for the reversible saps. They have it, and that a part of that, the reason why you're seeing so much of that going along is because of what they've done to white men. They've created a lot of soy boys, and again, that's purpose. Again, the propaganda is everywhere. White males have had the alpha knocked out of them. And a lot of that has to do with what you see in sports. And again, I'm going to be talking about that in the book. They want fewer alpha male whites who great athletes are considered alpha males. They don't want them. They don't want to have young white kids to have role models like that. And they don't. When I was a kid, there was black kids that struggled for role models, but they always had them in sports. Even then, white kids now, who are their role models? Donald Trump? I don't know. A white woman who has Negro children is literally taking a shit in her gene pool. Well, you have quite a way of describing it, Chris, but I know a lot of people feel that way, and it's certainly sad to see when it's forced. And R.B. Ham got it over there. Cool. Frederick Douglass did not speak on that. Absolutely. Most of the blacks, any of them had good jobs back when in the 80s didn't speak Ebonics either. It's been, I don't know how many blacks I work with, when I heard their parents talk, they spoke better English. That makes no sense. That's a devolution, and it's done on purpose. Okay, Ryan Bradley, good to see you. And G-Pie, Joe Nathan said, I think they canceled Bill Cosby for what he did. He did, but for the dad character he represented during the 90s. Absolutely. That's G-Pie, I've talked about that. I'm beginning to think that he was set up because that all those allegations came right after his son died very suspiciously. He was like run over and he was on the side of the road changing a tire or something. Very strangely, and that obviously crushed him. But Bill Cosby had made many comments criticizing ghetto culture. Pull your pants up and all that stuff and stop acting stupid. And he was one of the few black celebrities that was doing that. And so I don't know. Certainly if he raped those women, obviously he's reprehensible, but it's kind of quite a coincidence. And then, like 800 women came out and said he had raped them over the years. Stolen Hellcat says they still play P. Diddy on music playlists at businesses. Sure, why not? Kalergi plan. It's why not? I mean, and this is the problem. I don't blame blacks for any of this. I always talk about I blame whites and white elites. They're the ones that enabled it. Movado says sports TV. Look at how many white dads are in TV made to look like absolutely. And Movado says apparently his current administration has appreciated free speech. Of course not. They don't. They want to make anti-Semitism illegal. And again, the conservatives don't blink. When they talked about being canceled on college campuses, when they were. And I talked about it when they weren't. Even mainstream conservative speakers were being heckled and not allowed to speak by the crazed woke left. Obviously, that was wrong. As a free speech purist, I said that. But now what happens? When you have Palestinians, or not Palestinian sympathizers, people that are white or non-white on college campuses protesting in support of Palestine or against Israel, suddenly they want to make that illegal. Trump does, and it's absolutely wrong. Again, that's just, you either believe in free speech or you don't. Oh, yes, Sir. Piper Fogel says Officer Tatum. Yeah, he was a great guest. He was a black. Yeah, I've seen him. I think he's probably too big for me. But, certainly I think about, I would like to have somebody like that on. Whether he'd listen to me, I don't know. But, any of you guys that listen to any of these people, whatever, you can always suggest me to them and say, hey, you should go to this guy's show or talk to this guy. Anomaly said in one of his videos that he thinks the Cosby story has a lot of holes in it. Well, yeah, and then they eventually ended up letting him out. Now, he's been quiet since, I guess he's really old now, but might not have all his faculties about him. But Movado makes a good point about how the white dads on TV are made to look like goofballs. Absolutely. They're so stupid. I mean, any woman of any little girl can beat them up. They're constantly getting beaten up and ridiculed and outsmarted by even their 6-year-old daughters. I mean, it's ridiculous. They look like cream puffs. They're so wimpy, and it's terrible. And what happens? When you see enough of that, that's what happens. Life imitates art. And so you start seeing it in real life, and we do. Chris Buchan says, why do so many white conservatives want to kiss black ass? Exactly. And that's the whole problem with MAGA and Trump. It's complete. They want any black that will say, I said, if you're a young black out there and you're listening to my show for some reason, if you want a path to success in life, go down to your headquarters Republican. They will back you. They want any black face because they're so scared of being called racist. So they had somebody like Herschel Walker, again, who just fractured the English language. And of course, the left was allowed to make fun of him because he was a conservative. When the people on the left fracture the English language too. But that's the easiest way for upward mobility for blacks today. Just say you're a Republican. You'll get a job somewhere that's good because they desperately want that. I don't know why that is, and that's one of Trump's biggest, even though he gets called a racist, it's hilarious the way he's called a racist. I don't think he's ever said the word white while in office. I don't believe in terms of the white race. If he has, I haven't heard it. But you can't keep having the idea that, well, we're just going to have a great black conservative, and that's not because first of all, all of them are, and some of them are doing it for political expediency. I think Candace Owens seems like the real deal. She's doing a lot of great work, but What is Truth podcast says Anomaly is a flip-flopping extraordinary. I don't know who it is. Kian says Leonardo Joni has gone mainstream. Well, she seems to. I mean, she's on Band.video, Kian said. Has she been on Alex? I'm surprised she hasn't. But although, she doesn't seem like she'd fit Alex. Because Alex, again, like Trump, because he's so committed to Trump, he doesn't, he wants, nothing to do with anything racial. And Alex will walk. I used to say anytime when you listen to callers for Alex Jones, when the caller would be an obvious, having an obvious Ebonics accent, I mean, Alex would kiss his ass and go and practically offer him a job. I mean, that's how desperate they are. And it's Karen Carpenter says John Walton was a great white dad. Yeah, the Waltons, sure. I mean, you said Ward Cleaver. I mean, I still remember from Leave It to Beaver. I mean, show had a huge impact on me. And when I became a dad, that's who I had in mind as my role model. Not my own father, who was really flawed and an alcoholic, and not really any of the other males in my life that I knew of. But I thought of Ward Cleaver. No, I doubt that I lived up to Ward Cleaver's parenting, but I tried. I mean, that was in my, and I don't imagine I'm the only other people. You had, lots of dads like that. The dad was a strong figure. The woman was supportive. And I'm not saying, we have to be chauvinist and go back to that, but now things are completely flip-flopped. The woman is the primary figure, always. The mother is, and the dad stands behind her, and he does the cooking. And, if there's a prowler or something now, I think the woman goes out and the dad stands, shoving behind him. It's insidious propaganda, and it's worked because we now have, life imitates art. Karen says your dad was fantastic. That's great. I'm glad to hear that. Not all of us were that fortunate. Mavada said he was going to have a joke with a friend of mine that I was going to start a YouTube and become a big fan of Trump. Oh, you could? Hey, just call up Alex Jones and sound as black as you possibly can, and he'll probably offer you a job. Jeannie Poole said Sean Penn did the same thing. He had a woman he would call and schmooze with her constantly, trying to get her to say she liked him. Yeah, that's what it is. It's pathetic. It really is. But saying whatever they claim the average white IQ is versus the average black IQ, I don't know that it's significant. Because who's catering to who? I mean, it's stupid. It's ridiculous. Harlan Stoneway, absolutely. Will Geer, Grandpa Walton was a blacklisted communist. Look it up. But he was in Executive Action, which was the first film that talked about a conspiracy to kill JFK. So he's got that going for him. Jeannie says, bought toys for her kids, called them his nephews. It was say, well, Hannity wears this CIA lapel pin on the air. So, Karen says she does her best. Deborah Wheeler says, you turned out well, Donald, all that matters. Well, thank you so much. I mean, he wasn't abusive. I'm not going to say that. He was an alcoholic, and he had reason. He had a sad life. He started working when he was 14. He had to support his 9 brothers and sisters, and he had a lot of talent. I think he sang well, and I got whatever musical ability I got from him. I think he would have been a writer if he could have been. And I hope that if he was alive and seeing me, he'd be proud of me. I don't know, but he might be jealous. But I felt sorry for him because he deserved a much better lot in life. And he turned to drink probably with good reason, as a lot of people did. So I cut him slack. I don't get too resentful about it. And I appreciate you saying that, Deborah. Chris Bucket says, did you see the videos of that white mother in Minnesota that told the POS Somali F you? No, I didn't see that. I'm sure that got a lot of attention, more than whatever the Somali might have done. It doesn't matter. That's a bigger crime. Can I speak now, honey? Tell them all how much of a cuck you are, husband. Yeah, exactly. Will Geer was a botanist. Interesting man. Was he? Yeah, certainly. He was, and ironically, there have been claims that Will Geer was gay, as there have been claims that Ellen Corby, who was the grandmother on the Waltons, was gay. So I don't know, maybe you don't want to sit and think about that. Both of the grandparents of the Walton, lovable grandparents, were possibly gay. I don't know. Chris says, got to make men look weak. Now it's the agenda on TV shows. Absolutely, there's no question about it. That's the overriding agenda. It's to make men look weak, make white look stupid, especially white men. I mean, it's so obvious. Leonardo was talking about I'm not sure. The live stream. I saw some of that. It was about, that was good. Yeah. Chris Buggins says Spencer Tracy and Catherine were both good. Well, supposedly, but they also supposedly have an affair. But then you're talking about Scotty Bowers. He made those allegations later. Maybe it was true. I don't know. But Spencer Tracy was not a nice man. He used to punch autograph seekers in the face, or supposedly. So I can't watch any movies with him anymore when I heard that. Jeannie says maybe the grandmother's a female homosexual and the grandfather was a male lesbian. You never know. We don't know what it is now. All we know that nobody's normal, so-called, if any of us are normal. Ellen Corby was everywhere. She has a great scene in It's a Wonderful Life, my favorite film of all time, by the way. Howard Hughes was madly in love with Ellen Corby. I find that hard to believe, Chris. I don't know. Maybe you're talking about somebody else. But at any rate, we're just about out of time. Guys, you make it enjoyable. I rely on you being in the chat room. Appreciate that. Thanks for being so involved. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Oh, Katharine Hepburn. Okay. How could anybody be in love with Katharine Hepburn? Ugh. It's another one I could never stand. As Claire Booth Luce said, she ran the gamut of emotions from A to B. And of course, she was nominated for more Academy Awards than anybody until Meryl Streep came along, who I think is pretty much in the same category. Yes, Piper Fogel said, so is Will Gear. Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, that Scotty Bowers wrote about that. Yeah, that was incredible. Although, if you believe Scotty Bowers, apparently everybody was gay, and he had sex with everybody, male and female, in Hollywood, according to this guy. I don't know. I guess he led an exciting life. But thanks, Karen. I'll be on American Unplugged tomorrow. So thanks, everybody. I appreciate you listening. Appreciate you watching. Stay sane out there. It's not easy. And we'll talk to you next week, same time on I Protest. Take care.